Hello, welcome to the Prescott Today show. My name's Harry Oberg. I'm Mayor Prescott. I have two guests with me today, city employees. The first is Mr. Jeff Burt, who's our Director of Economic Initiatives, and Mr. John Cox, our Airport Manager. The segment that we're going to start with this morning is talking about the airport and the fact that I think it's a world-class airport for this area. It's a real gem, or a diamond in the rough, maybe we could call it. And I think it's key to the economic development of Prescott and the Quad Cities area. And there's really two aspects to the airport that I'd like to try and make people aware of. The first one is, of course, the aviation side, which is both the general aviation and the commercial aviation. And the other one, of course, is the industrial park. I'll let you go ahead and discuss both of those, but today we're going to focus probably more on the aviation side. Mm-hmm. Would you like to start talking about the industrial park?
Sure, be happy to. I think the airport for Prescott is kind of that asset that a lot of communities look for. What can they point at as kind of a hub, an anchor for their economic development to grow on. And in this instance, I think the airport's a perfect example of that. It's an asset. It's been there. There's some great opportunities for development around it. And it presents a lot of potential for us in terms of both bringing in business, bringing in tourists. There's just a lot of aspects of the airport. I think that if we take care, do the planning, have the vision for it, that the actions that we take today are going to be vital to making sure the airport is a vibrant, available asset for the city 10, 15 years down the road.
And I think we're trying to bring in companies that are going to be associated in commercial areas around the airport, as well as possibly having them start up businesses on the airport proper. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Right now there's probably over 500 acres of industrial land that's zoned, ready to go. And whether the company has 20 employees or 200 employees, it's very important for both clients and maybe even for parts, equipment, for vendors to be able to get in and out. So that proximity to the airport can certainly be a real asset for us and help hopefully make some deals happen, especially if a company has out-of-state locations that they want to be able to serve.
Okay, and I think on the aviation side, maybe we could talk a little bit about the history of the airport, when it actually, how it developed. I think starting in 1929, I think for a while it was a military airport in the 40s for training. Then it finally came over to, I think, becoming an asset of Prescott. I think it was transferred to us. And also maybe we could talk about some of the activity, the number of operations, and also where we rank right now, both statewide and nationally.
Yes, Mayor, you are correct. The airport was actually founded, if you will, in 1929, and it was dedicated as Ernest A. Love Field. Ernest A. Love was actually an Army Air Corps pilot, if you will, in World War I, and unfortunately perished in that effort. But they dedicated Ernest A. Love Field here in honor of the fallen pilot. And they have had a lot of military training opportunities, which still go on today. We have a lot of military transitioning through here. So you may see different kind of military jets, different kind of military helicopters, but a lot of military use this field to transition, if you will, from Texas to California quite a bit. We had about 60 operations just this week of the military that's been transitioning through. So they still utilize this airport, although it is a civilian airport. Many businesses operate out of this airport right now, as you know, for fire suppression services. The United States Forest Service operates out of there. And their territory really extends from California to Utah and to Colorado, as well as all of Arizona for any fire suppression for wildland fires, if you will. And they keep very busy during the peak season. We have a lot of dozens of other airport operators at the airport, including Embry-Riddle, a private institution that provides flight training, guidance aviation. There's North Air Aviation. There's a lot of training for fixed wing as well as helicopter training operations there, and that is why Prescott Airport is labeled as the fourth busiest general aviation in the United States. Fourth busiest general aviation airport in relationship to operations, which is a touchdown or a takeoff, if you will, and which is extremely busy. Per capita, it's got to be the busiest in the United States. It's the third busiest airport, if you will, in the state. So only Sky Harbor, that little commercial service airport to the south of us, and Deer Valley are the only two that are busier than Prescott Airport in the state, and that has a lot of interest, I want to say, by the Federal Aviation Administration, who wants to help support and build the infrastructure of Prescott Airport to operate a safe facility, and the ADOT, the Aeronautics Division, as well. So yeah, there's a lot of very vibrant activity going on at the airport, and it's very busy for a specific reason.
Yeah. We own the airport. You operate the airport. We support it with, I think, an enterprise fund, and also out of the general fund. We're trying to get some of the other mayors and cities to get involved and come in and partner with us at the airport, because I think that's important. We may be looking in the future at a airport authority, possibly, to operate the airport, so we get a little more buy-in from the county and the other communities around us. But we also have a relationship with FAA and ADOT. Can you kind of briefly explain our relationship with them and how important they are to us?
Well, if I can, just to kick it off, I mean, the whole issue of making sure you have a safe airport, you're developing infrastructure to make sure you can operate the way you need to, and to really kind of have the foundation to grow the future of the airport. The role of ADOT and FAA are absolutely critical, not just here but across the country. 95% of some of these projects out there, for 5 cents we get 95 cents in return. A great return for our residents and our businesses here. So, I mean, ADOT and FAA are essential partners for the city moving forward. John, I think, has done a great job in kind of reaffirming and growing that relationship with them, and clearly it's something that the city needs to do, because we've got some ambitious plans. I don't think they're unrealistic, but we're going to have the partnership of FAA and ADOT to pull those off.
And I think we've had a number of projects in the past which ADOT and FAA have supported, and I believe, and maybe you can explain this, I think there's something about whether or not we're funded at 95% by FAA, we're 90%, and what share we have with ADOT, and then how much we actually have to come up with ourselves from our own city funding. And maybe you could discuss that a little bit, and also what we've had in recent projects in the last couple of years that the FAA has paid for. I think it's like close to $8 million in projects, and I think we got about close to $2 million in projects that are ongoing right now, or we're going to start completing in the near future.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mayor. The FAA has grants for infrastructure and development in the essence of safety that are at a 95% share, if you will. And that's what the cities, the communities' highest interest is how to secure those Federal Aviation Administration grants. The state, for example, through the Aeronautics Division, can provide a grant share at 90%. So that means that 10% of the grant for the infrastructure of the project is from the local coffers, from the Aviation Fund. And that's really considered an investment, if you will, in the development of the airport. And it's the infrastructure development that the FAA and ADOT funds. There's a lot of different opportunities and discussion with the FAA and ADOT to rank what there are as far as grant opportunities at the airport. So that's really the focus in the communication with them. Number one is the FAA and ADOT want to have confidence in this region, that the entire region supports the development and supports what's going on in the growth of the airport. If they suspect, again, that through communication or non-communication, that the city or the region is not interested in developing the airport, then they just won't participate in any grants. So that's why when you were mentioning the importance of having a unified or a joint, support of the airport, be it whatever mechanism that is decided, if it's going to be an authority or a regional airport, or how it's actually going to be addressed or titled. That's what would really, the FAA would really be interested in knowing per capita how large of an impact area, how many people or citizens actually support the airport, because they want to come in and have a success with any kind of development that does occur. And so it's been a great relationship. You're right, just in the past year the FAA and ADOT and other sources have contributed up to $8 million for some infrastructure development that's benefited large businesses. The United States Forest Service, there was just an upgrade that occurred right outside of their facility, if you will, so they could bring in larger aircraft and they could bring in more aircraft in a more timely manner in order to fight the fires and suppress those fires before they actually impacted the residences and homes. So that's just one example of the infrastructure that was built and in place that supported the interests of this community.
And I think we've improved the lighting system there and some other things recently.
Yes, yeah, there was an old generator dating back to the 50s that you really needed to kick that thing hard in order to make sure that it continued to work. And so again, the FAA contributed about $3.5 million specific to that project, so that the airport had uninterrupted lighting services, especially at night or in inadvertent weather, and that the infrastructure is critical. So it's all underground, but it was the lighting systems for the runways, the taxiways, the signage for the pilots, if you will, to be able to fly in and safely operate in and out of the airport.
And I think right now we're looking at upgrading fencing or security.
Yes.
Also, I think the master plan is about ready to kick off, as well as the EA on the terminal. Possibly you could discuss that for a moment.
Sure. The actual master plan, every 8 to 10 years or so, the Federal Aviation Administration funds a planning mechanism for the airport, especially the ones that they think are a critical facility. And they really view the Prescott Airport as a critical facility that's constantly changing and growing, and the whole intent of a master plan is for the region to really identify what it is that they want to see in the airport. Does the region support additional or increased commercial service? Does the region support corporate aviation? Does the region support more involvement from the United States Forest Service or from any of the other service agencies out there that the airport actually provides a service to? So that's really the primary interest, if you will, from the FAA in creating this master plan and partnering with this region, partnering with the state and this community to get a planning mechanism that will really paint a picture or have an idea of what this airport should and could look like through the support of the region 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years down the road.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about Essential Air Service.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically how we have our commercial aviation side here. It's through the Emergency Air Service or Essential Air Service. And also the people that we have right now supporting us in that is Great Lakes Aviation.
Right.
So maybe you could kind of explain what Essential Air Service is and what agreements we have right now with Great Lakes in providing service for Prescott.
Certainly, Mayor. The EAS was started basically to help smaller communities retain a level of air service that the market kind of pushed away when we had so many iterations of what our airline service in the U.S. was going to look like. And as part of that process where airlines were buying each other and things like that, one of the fallouts was a lot of smaller communities were threatened with losing their access to air service. So Congress put EAS in place to help provide that service, and in order to do that, there was a subsidy that was approved for airline service through U.S. Department of Transportation, and communities have the opportunity of going after the EAS service and hopefully being able to have an airline that will want to come in, provide that service. For us, it is Great Lakes Airlines, and fortunately, we have been able to get it. The subsidy has been there for it, but the changes that continue with some of the changes that FAA has now for the pilots and the hours and things like that continue to put a strain on it. But it is important to us. One of the to me most important elements of it is by virtue of having EAS service in here, we are designated a commercial air service. By doing so, when we're competing for grants, we only compete with 10 or 11 other airports. If that went away, we'd be competing against 64 or 63 airports for that. So there is some benefit. I think the key for us is to make sure going forward that we do everything we can. We've got a new EAS service agreement that'll be coming up next year to see that we can try to get the very best arrangement, the very best service for our residents and businesses, and see if we can put that together so going forward we increase seat availability and hopefully reliability, because that's a critical issue for people.
Well, and I know I've talked to a number of people that told me that in the past, there was a number of aircraft going to Phoenix, and people would fly down and the plane was full, they would come back full. I think at one point back in 2007, 2008 or something, I think we're up around 11,000 passengers a year utilizing the airport out here. And more recently, because of some of the difficulties that have been placed on the airlines by the FAA, some restrictions, it's really impacted Great Lakes, and they've had to cancel some flights because they couldn't get pilots, or sufficient pilots, I guess. And we're down around a passenger rate right now, I think, for the year. Last year was like 3,500 or something like that. And so we need to definitely improve that. How do you see improving that? One of the things I think is instructive is to take a look at Flagstaff. They improved their terminal. They lengthened their runway. They have now 5 jet aircraft, or have 5 flights a day by jet aircraft down to Phoenix and back. They indicate that they serve a service region of about 149,000 people. And that's counting the Verde Valley, I guess, Williams and Winslow and Holbrook and Ash Fork and Sedona, as well as, maybe even somewhat north. And they had 144,000 passengers last year. Well, we have right now in Quad Cities area, they estimate about 125 to 129,000. So it seems to me that there's an opportunity for an airline to come in here and have much more passenger service, because we do have the support of a large area that would actually, I think would be willing to fly out here to Phoenix or to other locations maybe in the west here, like LA or Las Vegas or Denver. And I've even heard people say, why don't we fly to Dallas, Fort Worth or something, So I think that's something we need to look at. But maybe we can just kind of discuss that a little bit on how we think this might move forward. I know that on the second segment here, we're going to be talking with Dr. Sabata and another professor about a survey that's going to come up. So I think that's important. But and I think, John, you mentioned to me some time back that I think the airport shuttle indicates they have about 80,000 to 90,000 people that they take to Phoenix and back. It seems to me that would be quite enough to support increased air service here and possibly a larger airline.
Those are all very true statements, Mayor, and the fact that Flagstaff would be a good business model for Prescott. It's a little bit larger, but it's attainable. Yeah, and the Flagstaff commercial flights, they do have 5 flights a day, if you will. They go to Phoenix and back to Flagstaff, and most of those seats are full. It really depends on what this community wants, and their vote, if you will, is to purchase tickets on the airline. So for an airline to realize, they're all in it for a profit. So if they want to come to Prescott, they want to make sure that they're actually going to make a profit here. And the citizens can vote by purchasing those tickets. If that's the destination that they like, that's the convenience that they like. Right now, Great Lakes Airlines has service to LAX. Can't think of any larger airport in the western portion of the United States where you can catch so many different flights. Northern California, Oregon, Washington, you can go all over the Pacific Rim, if you will, from LAX. So, I think that that's a very attractive flight for the residents here. They can either drive 8 hours through rush hour traffic in LA, or they can take an hour-and-a-half flight from Prescott, where there's free parking right now, very convenient access through the terminal. You do go through TSA just like any other commercial service airport. That leakage analysis that you were talking about, where Arizona Shuttle and certain other businesses offer shuttle service to to Phoenix Sky Harbor. That's what they call the leakage analysis, where, well, is it a potential for the airline to offer that kind of service? And it really is up to the citizens here and the region. Like you said, 129, 130 people that do have travel opportunities in and out of here. If that's the destination that they want to see is in Phoenix, so that they can use that airport as a hub and fly anywhere else in the United States or beyond, I think that's always a good opportunity. You mentioned the survey, and I think that survey, if we have enough respondents, is going to be indicative and a very good tool for us to utilize to talk to these airlines and ask them if they're interested in flying in and out of Prescott.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and I think that the other part of that question is that we have been asking those questions over the last few years of airlines, and one of the pieces of feedback we got was, we visited the airport, we'd really like to see a new terminal, and when you get a new terminal, come and talk to us again. So there are other aspects of this, and the mayor and council are aware of that, and that's why it's a priority, because airlines have told us directly that's part of the infrastructure they want or need to see in order to better consider Prescott for air service. And at the end of the day, that's what we really want to get, is improved air service for businesses and residents.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, sir. And that is a good point, Jeff. The existing terminal was built in the mid-50s, and it's undersized even for the existing commercial service that operates out of there. But, existing city manager Craig McConnell did mention, he says that axiom of if you build it, they will come. He feels that's kind of a tired expression at times. But then he also stated in the next sentence was, if you don't build it, they definitely won't come. And I think that's a statement from the airlines too, that if we want to have a 50-passenger aircraft here, your terminal needs to be able to accommodate 50 people. And right now, it just won't be able to do that. So, that would be the need, if this community would like to see that, a functional, expandable, operational terminal that can provide the infrastructure, if you will, for an airline to be interested in flying in and out of Prescott.
And I think the city council is very interested right now in trying to get a better terminal, because they understand we need that to get better air service here, commercial air service. Eventually, I think they also understand we're probably going to have to lengthen the runway and strengthen it a bit, primarily to support the Forest Service. With their slurry bombers when they come in, the C-130 and some of the others, we're having to give them a waiver right now, and we really don't want to continue to do that. That could have some impact on the airport that we have to really be careful about. So, well, thank you, Jeff and John. I appreciate you coming in and giving us a little understanding of where we stand right now in commercial air service here, and what we need to do to make improvements on the airport. In the second segment, we'll be talking with Dr. Robin Sabata and another individual about the survey and how that's going to be conducted and how the community can support us in getting the information we need to eventually be able to market ourselves to an airline to get them to come in here. So we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the Prescott Today Show, our second segment. I'm Harry Oberg, the Mayor of Prescott, and I have three new guests with me. Dr. Robin Sabata, Dr. Aaron Bowen, and Lucas Mackey, who is a student researcher who will be helping with a study that we're going to be discussing in just a few minutes. I think what I'd like to start on is just talking about the aviation industry in general and how it's going to be impacted by some decisions that are being made nationally. And I think people are going to eventually see Prescott as a more desirable destination airport. Can you explain some of the things that are going on in the aviation industry, talking about ground transit, airline mergers, and also the growth forecast for Phoenix?
Well, sure, and I think these are good questions and good topics to discuss. A lot of folks don't think that maybe something that's happening throughout the nation can really impact Prescott, and I think that actually our steering committee looked at some of these issues when we were saying what the future of the airport could be. And one of them would be the American Airlines U.S. Airways merger. This is something that perhaps a few people don't know, but there was a settlement agreement that was struck in November of 2013. It was a 3-year agreement, and essentially it was to put an agreement that historical levels would be maintained for 3 years. What this meant is certain cities that were potentially heavily impacted by the merger asked for some protections to be able to keep service in place so they could sort things out, and then at the end of that 3 years, all bets are off. Well, Phoenix was one of the cities that was quite vocal about the merger and very concerned about it. So in the settlement agreement, the keeping those employment levels steady was an important part of that agreement. That agreement actually expires in November of this year. And so as a result, you can see that some changes have already occurred in Phoenix. And what that means for Prescott folks is that maybe the same levels of air service that we had enjoyed access to at Phoenix may not be at those levels. A good example is that Phoenix has really put its money where its mouth is on this. They believe that there is going to be an impact. And an example of this is originally, say back in 2007, they thought we were going to be at 50 million total passengers at Phoenix in 2015. They only hit 44 million total passengers. 44 million is a lot, but it's still far below what they expected. So their original concept of building a west terminal with 33 new gates that was going to cost $2 billion was essentially put aside. And they went through this renovation or remodernization project that affected Terminal 3. This can actually be good and bad to some degree. The good news is for Prescott is that instead of having the regional flights land at 2 and use 2 eventually will be demolished and they'll be at 3, which means it'll really increase the quality of service. But the sort of negative of this is that we can expect that there'll probably be a reduction in flights, a reduction in choice. There may be some
Out of Phoenix?
Out of Phoenix.
Yeah.
Out of Phoenix. And so I think Prescott is well served to say, okay, there's some things happening in Phoenix that could indeed affect our quality of service, so it's really time to see what we can do to improve the Prescott air transportation access, looking at other routes, other destinations where we can maximize choice for the Prescott folks.
Yeah, and I think in the past, as I understand it, I don't remember with the airline, but apparently it went from Prescott into Phoenix and I think Terminal 4.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when you got down there, you didn't have to go get your bag, go out, go to another terminal, go back through security. You were able to just basically go to the gate for the aircraft you're going to fly out on. But now with us going, Great Lakes going into 2,
Yeah.
you have to do that. And it becomes quite a hassle. And a lot of people say, it's just not worth it. I'd rather go ahead and just take the shuttle down, go straight to the place that I'm going to
Yeah.
catch my plane and just go through security once. So
And that's so true. I think one of the things that, because I used to work at Sky Harbor Airport, Terminal 2 was a long terminal. You'd hit the curb, it'd be 118 degrees. You'd be dragging bags, trying to find a shuttle bus. Once the Terminal 2 complex is demolished, and the intent is to do so because it's very expensive to operate what is an antiquated terminal, you'll actually have service into 3 instead with the regional carriers. And even if you do have to change to 4, you'll be doing it with the SkyTrain. Indoors, very comfortable. It's really going to minimize, I think, impact on the passenger. So it does set us up to really have a better feed into the Phoenix system.
okay.
The other thing that may happen that we have to consider is that, with the I-11 corridor going in, many people who maybe were going to go to Las Vegas by air are now going to go by ground transit. As a result, we may actually see a restructuring of the way Southwest Airlines does business there. They use a focus city approach, and in doing so, what they are looking for is high traffic over short routes, and they may have to revisit their strategy as well. So what we may see is major changes in the way the airlines operate in and out of Phoenix. As a result, for us to look at other destinations, I think is a wise move at this point for the Prescott community.
Well, another thing too, I've talked to many people that tell me that they really worry about the I-17 corridor.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the fact that, they go down there, they get in an accident, or somebody gets in an accident, they're tied up for an hour, 2 hours. And they tell me it's basically a crapshoot if they're going to make it. If they decide to go down on the same day of the flight,
Oh, yeah.
they're looking at a 4 or 5 hours lead time to make sure that, if they're in an accident that, or involved in a pileup or, a long stoppage from an accident, that, they will be able to get to their flight and get out on time.
Yeah.
So what's happening in the ground, is that what you're talking about in the ground transit
Yeah,
portion too?
actually, you're right. What we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of urban sprawl at the north end of Phoenix, all the way up to the Anthem area. As a result, while there is some widening that is anticipated, and I know we have legislative support to keep I-17 flowing freely to the northern part of the state, there's really no guarantee. When you consider that it's 4 to 5 hours right now if you want to take a shuttle down, any sort of extra delays due to this additional demands of pressure on the I-17 corridor, it's going to make the trip so long as to make it really undesirable. I mean, factoring in an entire day down, an entire day back just for a ride. So we see that as a significant factor in saying what can we do to look at what Prescott can do to provide better air service access.
Yeah, and as I understand it, this whatever they're doing to try and improve traffic flow on 17, it's going to be a 2 to 3 year process once they even find the money and get it planned, designed, and get the work started. So we're probably looking at 4 to 5 years is what I'm hearing right now,
Yeah.
before there's anything that's going to be really available to minimize some of the impacts that are occurring right now.
Absolutely. And if you couple that with the possibility, I think the very strong possibility that we're going to see reductions in flights, reduction in choice, highly likely we'll see increase in fares. It's really wise to start looking at alternatives for the Prescott community, and frankly for the Quad City areas and this regional system that we have the possibility of delivering up here.
Now, we just talked about going into Phoenix, but I think right now we have Great Lakes Airlines that goes into LAX. They were going into Denver for a while, and then they stopped that, and started again and stopped again. But I know a lot of people that I talk to don't really want to go into Phoenix. They'd rather go into LAX if they're going to go, maybe to the Pacific Rim countries or Hawaii. And they want to go to Denver if they're going to go east. They don't want to have to add another leg just going through Phoenix. So I think that's going to be important in this study that we're looking at to try and determine exactly what is the interest here for commercial aviation in the Quad Cities area. I was just in the previous segment talked about Flagstaff. They improved their runway, the length of it. They got a new terminal. Right now, they indicate that they service an area of 149,000. And of course, Flagstaff is 65. We're 40,000. We think our service area is right around 125 to 129. Last year, they had 144,000 passengers. And we're at 3,500 passengers. So it's obvious that, from the things you've talked about, that I think if we get improved air service in here, that we will be able to get our passenger count up considerably, particularly when you look at 80 to 90,000 people. 80 to 90,000 people taking a shuttle down to catch flights out of Sky Harbor and coming back. So anyway, Erin, I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about how you see doing this study and how we can get the community involved and supporting it and making it as comprehensive as possible so that it'll be a marketing tool that we can get another airline or a more capable airline to come in here.
Absolutely. So for a little background, what I do at Embry-Riddle is aviation psychology. And that's the intersection of what people think about the airlines, what people think about aviation, and how that impacts their choices about where they want to go, whether they like or dislike an airline. So currently we have a group of students, one of whom is Lucas Mackey here, and they are working on designing a survey intended to go out to a large segment in Yavapai County to ask them about what they want from air service. We know what's currently offered at the airport, and as you pointed out, our number of passengers in the past year is far below our comparable city of Flagstaff. So we want to know, what is it that would entice people to come to the Prescott Airport and to fly out of Prescott? What is it that they're looking for in terms of service?
Okay. I've talked to the mayors of the other cities, and they're very interested in supporting this survey. So I guess one of the things I would be looking at from you, Lucas, is that you're going to be the one that's in charge of this thing, possibly. How do we bring in the other mayors and the other communities to make sure that we get as wide a get the people that are in the other towns and get their opinions on what they want in the way of commercial air service?
Yeah, definitely. So to get a very good sample size for our survey, because we want to pull people in all the different zip codes in the Quad City and Yavapai County area, just so that we get all the possible passengers that would fly out of Prescott Airport. And so to have the mayors on board and to have the chambers of commerce of all of the different cities on board is definitely a plus. And so what we're looking at right now is doing mailers, posting the link on all the city websites and everything, just so that people have a really easy access way to access the survey and do the survey. Very quick and easy, pretty short and simple as well to do the survey. And likewise, we're going to be doing some phone calls as well, just to randomly pick through the phone book just on certain zip codes, just so that we can get all the samples that we need.
So when do you think the study will start?
And so we're planning on releasing the study in 2 weeks, correct?
Okay, and so that you'll be sending that out by mailer for the most part?
We'll be sending out a combination. We really want to try and reach as many people from as many different parts of the region. And as well as, we know there are people who are very active online, and we know there are people who would be more interested in seeing something in the mail or speaking with someone on the phone. So we really want to try and reach people at a level that they're comfortable with. So local residents may be getting phone calls from one of our students wanting to talk to them about airport service. As Lucas mentioned, it's a very short questionnaire, really takes under 5 minutes to complete, but the information people can provide to us to help the cities and help the area develop a service that people actually want to use is so important. I really can't overstate the importance of people completing the survey and being willing to share their opinions with us.
Okay. I guess you'll probably be putting something out in the newspaper too, to let people know. Because I assume if you say some people are more comfortable taking a survey on the internet,
Right.
You have to let people know there is a website out there to go to.
Exactly. We're looking at advertisements in the Daily Courier, advertisements on the various city Chamber of Commerce websites, and we'll be looking into that. And then radio stations, everything local that we can get out into the community.
So public service announcements on the various radios.
Exactly.
Okay. And of course you've had this opportunity here too.
Perfectly.
Yeah. I guess one of the questions is going to be, what hub would you like to go to from Prescott, right?
Right.
Okay. Are you going to be offering hub recommendations or just let people say what is on their mind.
Well, one of the things we've been teaching the students in the survey design course is how to create a survey that people are willing to complete and people are able to provide accurate answers on. And so when you give folks a lot of open-ended questions, after a time they may get frustrated or irritated with you that you keep making them really work through these problems. And so what we're looking to do is provide sort of a top 6 list of suitable destinations, and we've worked in collaboration with the airport group to select those destinations. But we also give participants a chance to volunteer any additional airport that they would be interested in.
Okay. Because I know I've talked to people that talked about, of course, Phoenix, LA, San Francisco, I think it was Salt Lake,
Right.
Las Vegas, Denver, and then something in the east.
Right. Sometimes it's Dallas and
Yeah, Dallas or San Antonio or something
right.
like that.
And
So-
those are all on our options list actually.
Okay, good. So how many students do you have helping you in this?
We have 8 students total.
8? Okay. And so is this credit work for your degree?
Yes, and so this will be applicable to Aviation Business Administration degree and a couple other of the business degrees on campus.
Okay, great. Well, looking forward to the survey and what it's going to actually have for us. As you know, we're about ready to do the master plan, airport master plan, and I think the survey would be very supportive of that. Do you see it that way too? Or?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, air service forecasts are part of the master planning process. This will actually help bolster, I think, the suspicions we have about the strong demand we have locally for reliable, convenient air service. And it'll fortify, I think, the destinations that we have in mind. I mean, we have an EAS contract underway right now. It's up for rebid, and that's going to be closing in October. And of course, then the selections will be made by the City Council thereafter of any and all bidders, a decision on which one would be the best. And this also could help inform them in their decision-making process as to if there are multiple bids that are placed, that maybe one is providing service to an area that would be of greater interest to the citizens. And even that's the near term. In the longer term, I really think it can also be used to share with other airlines, other prospective airlines who are not EAS providers, and say, look at the level of demand that there is in Prescott, and it's underserved, and there's frankly a missed opportunity here if you don't take advantage of this. These marketing studies are very helpful. And then the third tool that we are seeking is a comprehensive marketing study, and this would actually help support some applications for grants. That will allow us to do a larger study that will involve more things, including visits to airline headquarters and having conversations with their route planning folks as to, is Prescott a good consideration and what we could do. I know in the past we've talked to some airline officials, and obviously the terminal is not an incentive as it currently exists. It's frankly an embarrassment how old and frankly how it doesn't reflect the community, I think, and it isn't welcoming. And so I'm really glad to see we're moving forward on that, because I think that would be an incentive. And then, of course, it's a safety issue because it's in the building restriction line. So I think it's an opportune time to move forward on the terminal project.
In the survey, are you going to have questions on what type of aircraft that people might like to fly on?
We do. We were aware, of course, anecdotally, that some individuals are a little leery of, say, propeller-driven aircraft over jet-driven aircraft. And we know that as Embry-Riddle folks that we love all airplanes. But that is something we're taking into consideration, is to what extent that will influence an individual's decision to go all the way down to Phoenix just to avoid a propeller-driven aircraft. We hope they won't. We're big fans of them. They're wonderful airplanes, very fuel efficient, very safe. But we do want to know whether that's a decision-making factor.
And I guess the thing I hear of many people, because we have a retired, pretty much a heavily retirement community population here. Many of us prefer to have bathrooms on the
Oh, absolutely.
airplane. So
Not just the retirees. I think we all do.
okay. So what type of aircraft do you think we would be looking at? From,
Well-
once this survey is completed, what kind of aircraft do you think would be?
In terms of that will in part be influenced by the current runway infrastructure more than anything else. And that's, length of the runway, the durability of the runway, and all things with Dr. Sabata's probably far more familiar than I am. And so that'll be probably the cap, is what can our current runway support? Do we need to expand the runway? Services, infrastructure at the terminal. Because again, those tend to be your biggest limiting factors. If we had a 75-seat aircraft land here, even if the runway was good, but the terminal couldn't hold everyone and we couldn't provide services and no one could clear through their security and luggage, then you're not going to fly through here.
Yeah.
And so it's really going to be all those elements of the system working together. And if we see enough demand to warrant a 50 or 75-seat aircraft, then that puts that information in the hands of the airport working group and all of you to see that if we really want this to be successful, that infrastructure needs adjustment.
Because I think with Great Lakes, we thought we had an agreement with them to bring in a larger aircraft and one with a bathroom on it, more seats. But they didn't do that. And of course, recently, I think right now they're limited to 9 passengers a plane.
Well, there's some additional factors that actually got to the point that they had to go to a 9-seat configuration. As you may have heard, there's a pilot shortage, and as a result, it was difficult for them to staff the aircraft with 2. So they went to an alternate configuration that allowed them the latitude to go down to 1. And so as a result, I think that actually sort of depreciated the experience for a lot of people. And I think we're getting a hold of this pilot shortage situation. I think Great Lakes is moving forward, and one thing I know that they've done is they've really worked at increasing the reliability. I know there was some issues, community issues anecdotally that were expressed about the reliability of the Great Lakes flights, and I know that in the last 6 to 8 months that's really improved dramatically. So I think all these factors play into the satisfaction of the customer. And yes, I do think it needs to be larger aircraft. I think a 30-seater with and I don't want to say necessarily I want to limit it to one particular type of aircraft, but say a 30-seater that's got a restroom on board would be, I think, a reasonable next step.
Right.
And hopefully in the negotiations with this essential air service provider, whichever one is selected in this process, that the aircraft type is front and center as part of the discussion.
Yeah.
I think you will see increased interest between that and, frankly, the issue of reliability to make sure that we have not a limited cancellation schedule, so people can really count on their flight occurring.
Yeah.
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 I was just going to say that's one of the things we've seen in other passenger research is exactly what Dr. Sabata is saying. Passengers tend to have a very long memory when it comes to issues like reliability, and so as she says, Great Lakes in the past 6 to 8 months may have really stepped up its reliability, but unfortunately what people remember is the previous service, and that sort of colors all of their opinions about the general air service at the airport to our detriment. And so,
Well, my wife and I were going to go to Europe sometime back, and so we were going to fly from Prescott to Denver and then on east. And I think it was about a month out from the actual time we're going to fly. Great Lakes called us up and said we're canceling your flight on X day, and we're going to have you put you on a plane 2 days earlier. And so we said, well, we don't want to do that because we don't want to get to New York and just sit around for 2 days to catch our flight out. And so they couldn't really accommodate us in any way that was reasonable. So we ended up actually going to Phoenix and getting a separate leg going into New York. And so I know my wife probably will remember that for quite some time.
I think a lot of people do, and
But
so.
We do have a son that comes from LA to visit on occasion, and those have been very successful. Flight's always been on time. He gets there quickly, he gets here quickly, so she's very happy with that. So hopefully they can kind of pull it out in the long run.
exactly. And really the idea is what can they do to change the local public's perception of them as a reliable carrier.
Yeah. So you talked about a more comprehensive study.
Yes.
That's separate from what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, this will be the first leg, and in essence, what a community usually has to do is show that it's put some effort forward. So one of the grants that are available, it's called the Small Community Air Service Development Grant. And so the anticipation is that this would be the first step toward the community's contribution toward showing that it's ready for a little bit more funding. That grant's available for up to $750,000. It's through the Department of Transportation. And a number of other communities have applied for and gotten that grant. And I think that that would be really helpful to help us market a potential new operator, or to market the existing air carrier. So I think this is critical that we take advantage of these funding options. You know, we have limited funds here in Prescott. We recognize the fiscal realities of the situation we're in, and we don't want to make investments that aren't wise for the community. I believe these are wise investments for the community.
Yeah. So is that grant an FAA grant, or is
It's actually Department of Transportation,
Okay.
and those are granted once a year. So that would be the next step for next year, would be to go ahead and apply for one of those. And
Okay.
it would be to support the air service providers, and also to entice new to enter.
And that funding would allow us to do then the comprehensive study?
Yeah, the more
Okay.
comprehensive, the typical marketing study that you would give an air carrier that would be thinking about providing service. And actually I've spoken to some major air carriers, and they are interested, but they would like to see more marketing data before they can make that decision.
Okay. So would Embry-Riddle support us in that too, or is that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The fact that we're doing this is just the
Right.
first step toward that.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to whatever you can do for us to try and help us get the full understanding of what the public here wants to have in the way of air carrier service from Prescott, and what hubs they want to go to. We have a part, on the city council side to start to try and do something to improve the terminal and the length of the runway. And right now we're making it a priority to get something done on the terminal. We're looking at a terminal that can be it's going to be modular, so as you know, if we do really get dynamic flight service here, and we needed 2 gates instead of 1, and we could add another gate on that, another module. So we're looking at that, and I can tell you right now, there's a lot of support from the council to move forward on the airport. We know that it's going to be a little more difficult process to try and get something done on lengthening and strengthening the runway, and there's going to be a lot of decisions, and we're looking at an airport authority possibly to bring all the other surrounding communities in and get them to help in the cost structure at the airport, and anything that we move forward on, because right now I talk to some people that say, well, we know here Prescott's going to do it anyway, so why do we need to give them any money? We'll just enjoy the benefits. So hopefully we can kind of turn that around and get the support of all the other mayors. And I know as far as the study is concerned, they are very definitely interested in supporting that study. And every mayor I've talked to said, I want to see improved air service out there. So we're going to be looking at that.
Well, this is
So
great.
I want to thank you all for coming in today and sharing your thoughts on this study and where we're going in the aviation industry. I think that's very important. So want to wish everybody out there a great week, and hopefully we'll have some improved air service here for you in the very near future.